Welcome to the first module in medical writing curriculum. In this video, we will be trying to understand what medical writing is all about and what are the qualities you need to develop for being a successful medical writer. Medical writing is an interdisciplinary field, both interesting and challenging. It can be considered as an intersection of three different fields of medical science, statistics, and the art of writing. I'm sure most of you might have heard of this quote. In clinical research, a medical writer can influence a decision on if the drug should be approved for general public use or not, or can a doctor use a specific drug in his treatment strategy. Medical writing can improve public health or can also cause potential harm. It all boils down to how effective and unbiased is the work of a medical writer, and believe me, it is a huge responsibility. We think there are 11 basic tenets of medical writing that are crucial for you to be a successful medical writer. You need to be factual. This is the first and most important tenet of medical writing. You need to base your content on facts rather than some assumptions. All your writing should be based on sound statistical analysis. The second tenet is being objective. Unlike other forms of writing, a medical writer should avoid elaborate discussions on the data. Interpretation of data should be as objective as possible. As a medical writer, you should be unbiased. You invariably need to take a role of a third person when interpreting results of a clinical study. All your interpretations should be unbiased. The next tenet is contextualization. Most often than not, clinical trials are conducted as standalone trials. These are generally part of a clinical development program. As a medical writer, you need to understand the context of the trial and look at the bigger picture when making conclusions. This can be challenging because medical writers are not included in discussions all the time, and most of the knowledge and discussions are not effectively captured. It is your people skills and therapeutic area knowledge that come into play for extrapolating and understanding the context of the clinical trial results. Another tenet is you have to be clear in your writing. How many times have you read a piece of writing and thought it is a highly convoluted piece of work that could have been so simple? One of your jobs as a medical writer is to convert a complex concept into a clear piece of writing. At the same time, clarity should be accompanied by conciseness. The paradox of medical writing is greater is the complexity of a clinical study, more concise the writing is expected to be. Elaborate writing is considered to be a bad writing. Again, it is your dexterity as a medical writer that comes into play to make a complex concept into simple, concise, and clear piece of writing. Another important element of a good medical writing is completeness. Specifically, when dealing with clinical research, completeness of results should be taken care. Selecting a specific set of results can be termed as being biased. Simplicity is another important quality. We know that science is complex and drug development is usually a result of complex analyses. However, as writers, it is our responsibility to convert the complex ideas into simple, understandable statements. Simplicity is the cornerstone of high-quality writing. As with all forms of written communication, medical writing should be reader-centered. Although writing about clinical research is a common line connecting all types of writing, each type of document in clinical research addresses different set of audience. For instance, one type of document will be read by a regulator and another document will be read by a healthcare professional. It is the medical writer's responsibility to ensure that the writing is reader-centered and caters specific purpose. As a medical writer, you need to balance the message you are conveying across stakeholders. Most often than not, you will be writing for a drug sponsor. You will have to strike a balance to make the writing scientifically sound versus being promotional. You also need to strike the balance in explaining clinical versus scientific versus regulatory concepts. And last but not the least, you should have a sound judgment on which data should be presented. As a medical writer, you need to understand your boundaries, be it the style of writing, level of interpretation, presentation of data, selection of data to be presented. I know I said you need to be complete, but that does not mean each and every data point collected in a clinical trial should be presented. For instance, some parameters such as height are routinely collected. If it does not have any implication on the disease process, efficacy, or safety of a drug, it may not be required to make an elaborate description. So you as a medical writer should make a judgment on the relevance of the data. Now coming to some of the don'ts. Your writing should not be persuasive or misleading. Even if you are asked to be persuasive, the arguments should be based on robust proven facts rather than some assumptions with commercial interest. Overall, it can be said that medical writing is analogous to walking on a tightrope. You need to balance the facts, understand the boundaries, look at the bigger picture, have a broader perspective, and carefully choose each word. A medical writer is practically an arbitrator in most circumstances. Clinical studies are generally conducted by academic investigators. There is bound to be a conflict of interest in some situations. It is the medical writer's job to manage stakeholders, create convincing arguments, and at the same time follow the basic tenets. It is not uncommon for a medical writer to practically confront with marketing departments of the sponsor companies when trying to be unbiased. Overall, there are two broad types of writing in clinical research, although this might be slightly different for different types of companies. But majorly, you can either be writing for a scientific journal or you could be writing for a marketing approval. Now, when you are writing for a journal, this type of writing can be termed as publication writing. When you are writing for a marketing authorization, this type of medical writing can be called as regulatory medical writing. In the next set of videos, you will be learning further about regulatory medical writing in detail.